Hello, I'm Rob Hartz, and we're here at Spectacle Pond, and I'm honored to have our friend Johnny Mitchell, the author of Ceremonial Time and a dozen other books about nature, about Littleton, about history. And we're now in the middle of a discussion about, we just finished talking about our Native American, the peoples that lived here in the 1700s and before. I'd really like you to expand on what's happened, not just in general in New England, but here in Littleton, in terms of what were we known for in all those years of the late 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, into the, this century, actually. Yeah. What were we known for? How did we value all this? And what's happened in that preceding time? So maybe you can start with the early times. What was this town? What did it look like? What would we have been doing if we lived in this town?
Well, this immediate area between Gilson Brook and Beaver Brook, in those times, I mean, most of the land, 80% of whole east, northeast, was forest. Yes. 1640, 1650, when the English arrived. However, this little area here, on what's termed Scratch Flat, the square mile of land, it was being cultivated by the native people.
Say briefly where Scratch Flat lies.
Scratch Flat is the eastern boundary of Scratch Flat is Beaver Brook. Okay. And Beaver Brook hooks around, and I got a map here in the book, and Beaver Brook like this, and it hooks around and flows into what they call now Lake Mattawanakie.
Forge Pond.
That is not a Native American name. A developer made that up.
Are you sure? Yeah. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, cheap developer back in the 20s, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and then the English called it Forge Pond. Yeah. I don't know.
You're breaking all of our myths about how the natives were here in Mattawanakie.
I know, yeah.
But good, go on.
Well, anyway, that's the northern end, and then the western. It really goes over to I would say Gilson Brook and the pond here.
Right.
Are the western boundary, and the southern boundary is less clear, but it reaches down maybe another quarter mile or so. Right. Anyway, that's one of the most cultivated tracts of land in Littleton. And it was, so as soon as the English got here, they started clearing more land. And they built houses, I think, after the King Philip's War, they started, that would be 1677, 78, they started clearing more and more land, and pretty soon you got an established agricultural community here in Scratch Flat and elsewhere in Littleton.
Growing what? Growing what?
I think it was, multiple crops. I think here it was vegetables, but
we had orchards right out here.
That's what I was going to say. That comes later. Yeah. Later, this whole valley, Nashoba Valley, was famous for its orchards. The northern part of Scratch Flat, the hill, if you're coming through Scratch Flat on the Great Road, yes, and you look off to say you're going west, you look off to your right, that whole hill was orchards. And then as far as you go west to Leominster, orchards, all the way out to Wachusett. And well known, exporting apples to Europe. I mean,
Really?
Yeah, major apple country. But that was later. That was around 18.
Okay, well, let's stay with the 1700s. What would we have seen?
I don't know. It was probably, just local farming producing food for themselves, and then the excess went to the
and hay for the horses and the cattle.
Yeah, hay. Well, one of the reasons Concord was settled is because of the river meadows there, grazing land.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't have horses, by the way. Horses came later. They were using oxen,
Okay, so the oxen would be the main creature.
They didn't have horses, and they didn't have cats. A cat was a main.
Really?
Yeah.
Cat would have been a foreign.
I read, I just not from around here. A person went up to Maine and back to buy a cat. Anyway, so slowly that becomes more and more commercialized.
Right.
And then come and then there was sheep farming here too.
Right.
This is all sweeping up to the Civil War, and then
We had railroads.
railroads came through. Well, let's see, the Vicksburg, Thoreau writes.
Thoreau writes about in the 1850s.
Yeah, 1850. But that line. I don't know when it was laid, but
Okay.
yeah, that were railroads. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so. I'm not even sure when this started taking place, but this town itself, outside Scratch Flat was kind of the core of it, but outside of Scratch Flat, farms everywhere.
Right.
A whole farming town. That's what it was.
When I moved here, it was amazing. From any direction we'd come, you would see farmland on either side of the road.
When I came here, Scratch Flat, there were 5 working farms.
Right.
Now there are 2.
2. Okay.
And anyway, they were really known for the beef, sheep.
Yep.
I've forgotten the other crops. Maybe timber. They, went to
Exported.
Europe. Went to England. Yeah.
Okay. So we had an export trade
We had a
here.
major site for agriculture. So then comes
We had abundance.
abundance
that we could ship them out.
And then comes a series of very unfortunate events.
What were they?
Highways.
You mean 495?
Route 2.
Route 2.
Then
Route 2 would have been first.
Then 495. And that
What was the impact?
Well, that's it. It really destroyed the town, in my view.
What was lost because these highways?
The agricultural lands they started developing small industries. Well, Apple, very fine that was very old.
Yeah, very fine.
Yeah, I've forgotten when it was founded.
So, but that was an industry linked to the land and the
It
apples,
was
and it
that was
made
good.
sense.
No,
Right?
That's all right. That's that's fine. But slowly, because of modern times, everything started to change here, including the attitudes toward the land. And I mean, the people who used to live here, they looked at the land, but they looked at it as a resource.
Yeah.
But they needed the land.
Sure.
They needed a place to grow plants. Well, now we don't need the land anymore. And I think that starting, I don't know when it started, but after 495, people just began to think of this as a commuter suburb, or
Bedroom community,
and then came digital and all those things, and
we had many big businesses arrive, and that meant a lot of commuters, and that meant more highway.
Yeah. But there's a huge irony in this.
What's that?
And that is that the younger people who move here, they don't know, they really like the farms.
The remaining farms.
The remaining farms. The old guard, in a way, they sold their birthright.
You think, yeah.
They sold them. So, I mean, there's hope, but the hope isn't the old guard. It's the younger people. And who seem to have... There was a vote here on what to do with the land east of the center, those farmlands there, and there was a plebiscite. 85% of the people wanted to save those farms. Well,
it didn't happen.
Didn't quite happen. Right. Even though the democracy failed.
Really?
And they developed it. Yeah, they sold it off, and it's housing, and it's industries, and it's no respect for the farmers, the people who founded this Scratch Flat, and so it's the birthright, and I just think we have to do everything in our political power to keep the farmers working here, because there's still, we've got those farm stands. People come out from Boston here to get fresh food.
Yes.
I mean, these things are going on under until organic food space came in.
Well, I'll just add to this. We had visitors from Denmark that came and stayed in our house for 4 days, and they were amazed and pleased at the 3 farm stands down the road from us.
Yeah, it's a real resource.
They were just excited to be here. and they felt like fresh food and healthy food.
Yeah.
And this sustains us, and it's attractive to people as far away as Copenhagen. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
They also swam in our pond in early April, and
Yeah.
you know, that's a hardy group there. I
April,
didn't join them, but,
Yeah.
but anyway, that was fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I take what you're saying, because a number of us in Spectacle Pond Association were looking, and you can see across the way what was 11 acres of hayfield. And it was always hayed, and it was also a place for neighbors to walk after they would hay it. We could, you know, run out there with our dogs and meet neighbors and walk in the fresh air, and there's a forest walk up the way, and it was just a very nice place. So it did get developed, and we put out our statement saying, just as you were saying, we need to protect these spaces. 11 acres is not huge, but every acre matters.
Well, it does, you know, like I was, one of the books I wrote, there was this, sounds ironic, but there was a pine forest. Well, pine forests are a phenomenon of post-agricultural development.
Right.
If you abandon a field, the thing that's going to take over are pine trees, and that's a dead zone. Nothing much grows on. Pine trees used to grow singly.
Right, and very
they get
majestic.
So you cut down all the pines. I did a survey, 5 species of living things, 5 plants. And then I put it in this garden.
Right.
25 years later, I did another survey.
Yeah.
Guess how many living things were on that 1.5 acre plot? Just take a guess.
Living things on a half acre?
1.5 acres.
Acre and a half. Living things meaning plants and animals?
Plants and animals.
I don't know, 100, 200.
100, 200, 2,000.
2,000?
As opposed to 5 in the pine forest. And that makes a statement about land and what you can do with land.
Well, that requires a level of knowledge, because I would say some people that just want to leave the land as is, it wasn't always that way, and we might want to think about.
If you leave the land as it, if you
as we found it, we would say.
Oh, as you found it. Well,
and you're saying we would find it with a lot of pine trees that may not be as.
Well, see, the original forest here was oak and maple and beech. And hickory. Yeah, I mean, hardwoods. But then those single pines growing up, and it's a certain, what do they call it? Ecotone, you know, where you have a certain number of plants and animals. Well, the English cut all that down, and it was just single crops. I mean, it's not great for. It's great for people and everything, because you eat.
Well, it's kind of a story that we keep doing different things, and some of it's helpful and some not so helpful.
But it's called monoculture. You know, if you're growing one crop, you're in danger. And with the thing with climate change, the monoculture has, you know, when you get a fire, I mean, it's just, but anyway, the point is, if you just don't do anything with that land, you clear the pines, don't do anything, it'll all grow back to brush again, and it won't, the native forest won't return. What probably will return is another pine forest.
Right, exactly.
But if you manage it a little, which is what I did,
right?
You know,
that's good. That's very good.
I think I've got. I can't remember now how many different species. 37 different species of trees on that property.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
it really is, and it's a beautiful property, having been there. So. Well, maybe we'll get a look at it.
Well, it's a little rough, you know. It's not a. I don't use pesticides, of course, and herbicides. It's got. You know what you want to do is manage for insects.
Okay.
You want insects, and so I leave these grassy.
First, I thought to get rid of insects, but you're saying the opposite. Manage for insects.
Thank you. Everything needs insects.
Yeah, exactly.
No, manage for insects.
So we praise the insects. That's
yeah. So I leave. Well, I mean, the grasses and brushy areas, and the garden is woven in between those areas.
Well, I'm struck with your 2,000 number of living things.
A Harvard ecologist I know, Richard Foreman, he said, no, 2,000, you underestimated.
Really?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is working in terms of all these various majors of well-being and living creatures.
Well, the other thing is, You know, apparently every habitat in England is disappearing. And there's this woman, she's dead now, but Jessica Owens, she was an insect woman, you know.
Right.
And she did a similar survey in Leicester, where she lived, and she had only like 1/4 of an acre, and she had 7,000 species of plants on that. And she said virtually every habitat in England is disappearing except for one, the backyard garden.
Ah, might be the savior of.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get the big mammals there. We do, because we have bobcats and
We've seen bears out
and and deer. So you do need forest.
Right.
You have to have forest to keep the big coyotes.
The larger animals around.
Have to have forest, but agriculture and forest animals don't always go very well either. You know.
Right. There are challenges. Every age has its
deer and
challenge.
raccoons, and we have deer problem. I guess I don't see it as a problem, but they can. Anyway.
Well, let me ask one final question on this, because you've been very eloquent around the challenges we're all facing, and that goes back to the discussion we had earlier about climate change. You also spoke about Littleton and the changes we're making and the value you hold for the lands, both the farmland and the open space, the forests, and the insects we learned. What message would you want to leave us with around what we in Littleton can do that helps preserve our local, but also contribute to the global questions of things like climate change?
Save the farms.
Save the farms. Is that the number one thing?
Save the commercial farms.
Yep.
And dig up your lawn and plant a mixture of
no monoculture.
no green. Dig up your lawns. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But dig. I mean, cultivate your garden.
Okay. That's a great finish. Thank you, John.